There are 48 35mm E-mount primes on BHphoto, 20 if you want an autofocus. And out of all of those lenses, I think you should get this one, Sigma 35mm 1.4 Art. And today I'll tell you everything you need to know about it. I will be talking about the new version of this lens. Here is where it can get confusing. Sigma already had a 35 1.4 Art lens for Sony for a long time, but it was basically a DSLR lens with a built-in adapter for Sony. The DN in the name indicates that this lens was designed specifically for mirrorless cameras. The new version of the 35mm lens is better than the old one in every way. To start with, Sigma updated the design and added a few improvements to lens handling. The lens has dust and moisture protection. It also got an aperture ring, and you can choose whether you want it to have clicks or not. If you prefer to control the aperture strictly from the camera, you can set it to A and lock the switch. There is also a custom button on the side. In the world of native Sony lenses, it's a privilege for the wealthy, but Sigma made it available here. The placement is really convenient, you can easily press the button while shooting without adding any camera shake. I set it to focus hold function and use it constantly. The lens itself became lighter and shorter than the old Sigma 35mm Art for Sony because there is no need for a built-in adapter. Now the lens is better balanced with the camera. The focus drive has also changed. The old version had a mechanical drive, and now it's purely electronically driven, like on all modern mirrorless lenses. It has a stepper autofocus motor, but it works quickly. There is a common misconception that linear motors are faster and stepper motors are smoother, but in reality it depends on the specific implementation in a particular lens. The technologies themselves are very similar. In this Sigma 35mm, autofocus is fast, smooth and very responsive. Sigma produces lenses for E-mount under official license, so it's fully compatible and works perfect. Paired with the latest Sony bodies, it gives an impressive performance, keeping faces, eyes and objects in focus even wide open and in tough situations. Besides Sony E-mount, Sigma produces this lens only for L-mount. Don't expect to see it for Canon or Nikon mirrorless. Those guys are scrambling to get more money from their customers and won't allow licensed third-party lenses, at least for now. Despite the electronic drive, manual focus is not jerky and looks good in video, but you have to deal with heavy focus breathing. It is one of the few serious flaws of the lens, but it's a big one. The effect is very noticeable when focusing distance changes significantly. It will also make it harder to do focus stacking. Other optical issues are very minor. For example, there are some chromatic aberrations, but they are not purple as usual, but turquoise. Add a bit of warmth and you get a pretty and cinematic combination. However, chromatic aberrations are visible only in test shots of this kind. In normal situations, aberrations are rare and do not interfere with shooting. That's another big improvement comparing to old Sigma Art lens. All thanks to a very complex design with 11 groups and 15 elements, including various low dispersion and coated elements. Sharpness is excellent even wide open. For both photo and video, our A7 IV doesn't come close to full unleash Sigma's potential. Only A7Rs for photos and the A1 for video can show you what this lens is capable of in terms of resolution. Although the sharpness can be too much even at 1.4. That's why for video we always use freewheel glow mist filters. They add a little glow to all bright areas of the frame, but doesn't decrease the resolution in general. They come in different densities. 1/8 provide minimal effect, quarter our primary filter, I use it right now, it's more pronounced, and 1/2 is the maximum effect. Magnetic system helps us to adapt to changing situations in seconds. Tell me in the comments if you want to hear more about it. However, the filter must be removed if you are using this lens at minimal focus distance, which is 30 cm. At this distance, all the sharpness of the Sigma disappears. Usually, in such a close-up, you can immediately see where the focusing point is. The strip of sharpness catches the eye. Here it feels like a misfocused shot. Move back a bit and the issue disappears. The optics are indeed optimized for certain focusing distances. For this Sigma it's a waist level portrait and slightly further. But at close-up the sharpness is just not the same. But hey, at least the bokeh is always there. It is soft and pleasant, the rings in the center are round and closer to the edges they are slightly elongated. Although at least they don't double up like on old Sigma. When closing down the aperture, rendering doesn't change. 11 blades retain both the circular rings and the soft bokeh. Sigma 35mm is not afraid of backlighting, but it doesn't give interesting flares either. The vignetting is also typical, easily fixed and doesn't create issues. Lens distortion is minimal, but something weird is happening here. The standard profile in Capture One and Lightroom and the camera itself for some reason overcorrects the distortion. The photos look better before the correction than after. If you choose the manufacturer's profile in Capture One, everything is fine. During video shooting, everything is fine too. Only internal camera specs and standard lens profiles are affected by this issue. Maybe the profile camera applied by default is from the old DSLR version, or possibly something else. A strange phenomenon nonetheless. If you need a separate 35mm prime, I see only one reason not to buy this Sigma. If you are ready to pay almost twice as much for the G Master lens. The native Sony G Master 35mm 1.4 lens obviously doesn't have any profile issues. It is also lighter, even sharper, and doesn't have a problem with short distance sharpness. It has the same issue with focus breathing, but in some Sony cameras, for example A7 IV, it's fixed by the compensation algorithm. But you know, it is Sony, so it's $1,400. If you're ready for some minimal compromises, go for the Sigma 35mm 1.4 Art. You can get it for $800. We decided to go second-hand, waited a little and found one in perfect condition for only $550. Third-party lenses lose much more value on the second-hand market. If the 35mm focal length is not essential for your work, you can save even more and choose something like Viltrox or one of the dozen much cheaper options. The lens selection for Sony is truly outstanding. Bad cameras are a thing of the past, but good systems are not so common too. Canon and Nikon came late to the mirrorless party. It's a hard task to abandon everything you have been doing for ages and launch a new lineup in a declining market and all the difficulties of the recent years. Sony launched their full-frame mirrorless earlier than everyone else. And as it turns out, they started at the right time. Now everyone has good full-frame cameras, but Sony is the only one that has a good system. Do you agree? Write in comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. We here at GoxUA are system agnostic. We love our Fuji just as much as we love Sony. So expect more Sony and Fuji content. And for now, goodbye.